Vacations are meant to be relaxing, a break from stress, routine, and everything familiar. But sometimes, the places we choose for peace hold something else entirely, something that watches, listens, and waits. Tonight, you'll hear 3 true horror stories of vacations that went terribly wrong. You might think twice before booking your next getaway. Liam and Chloe needed a break. After a few stressful months at college, all they wanted was quiet, real, uninterrupted stillness far from the world. A small, isolated cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina, booked online, seemed like the perfect choice. The photos showed a rustic yet cozy hideaway, promising long hikes during the day and peaceful nights by the fireplace. As they drove down the rutted dirt road, deeper and deeper into the thick forest, their phone signal disappeared entirely. Eventually, they arrived. The cabin was, indeed, secluded, nestled in a small clearing surrounded by trees. It looked older and more worn down than in the pictures. The air was damp, filled with the heavy scent of decaying leaves and rotting wood. Still, the silence was exactly what they'd hoped for. They found the key under the rock as instructed and stepped inside. The interior was simple, a combined living room and kitchen with a stone fireplace, one small bedroom, and a bathroom. The furniture was old but clean. That first night passed quietly, just as they'd hoped, filled only with the sound of crickets and, every now and then, a faint scratching or rustling within the wooden walls. They paid it no mind, assuming it was squirrels or maybe a mountain mouse looking for shelter. The next morning, as they were packing for a hike, Liam noticed something strange on the worn wooden railing of the porch. 3 small wooden figurines had been placed there, crudely carved, vaguely shaped like people, or animals. It was hard to tell. But they hadn't been there the night before. Maybe the owner left them as decorations or keepsakes. Chloe said with a shrug, though she looked a little uneasy. Liam wasn't convinced. There was something off about them. He picked one up, its texture was rough and cold. Without saying a word, he tossed all 3 into the nearby bushes. They spent the day exploring winding trails through the forest, breathing in the fresh air and trying to forget the strange figurines. But when they returned at dusk, the sense of unease returned as well. There were figurines on the porch again. This time, 6 of them. Arranged in a perfect row. Still crudely carved, but slightly more detailed than the ones before. One appeared to be kneeling. What the hell? Liam muttered, a chill creeping down his spine. Who put them there? And why? That night, they couldn't sleep. The scratching in the walls grew louder, more distinct. And then, something new. A whispering. So faint it was nearly impossible to make out, like multiple voices murmuring from far away, or being smothered by the thick wooden walls. The sound drifted around the room, moving along the walls like it was following them. Liam and Chloe lay frozen, holding their breath, trying to convince themselves it was just the wind, or maybe their tired minds playing tricks. The next morning, the figurines were gone again. Not a single one on the porch. But relief didn't last. Chloe screamed from the living room. Liam rushed out to find her pointing at her blue scarf, the one she was sure she'd left on the couch the night before. It was now hanging from a low tree branch just beyond the window, at the edge of the forest. There were no footprints beneath it, only damp soil and decomposing leaves. The feeling of being watched became impossible to ignore. Someone, or something, was out there. In the woods. Watching them. Playing with them. Toying with them in a way that felt wrong. They started to feel trapped. The cabin that once seemed like a safe haven now felt like a cage. They checked the doors and windows multiple times, everything was locked from the inside. Secure. At least, as secure as it could be. The third night came, heavier than the others. The silence was oppressive, deeper than before. Liam and Chloe lay awake in bed, eyes fixed on the dark ceiling. The whispers returned, closer this time. Clearer. Though the words were still impossible to understand. And then, silence. Complete, unnatural silence. Even the crickets had stopped chirping. And then they heard it. Right beside their bed. From inside the wall. Tap, tap, tap. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Followed by a soft, drawn-out exhale. Tired. Old. A sound that seeped through the thick wood like it had always been there. Waiting. Liam and Chloe lay frozen in bed, holding their breath, ears straining for any sound. The tapping and the soft sigh from the wooden wall beside them had stopped, but the silence that followed was even heavier. More terrifying. The small room was submerged in thick darkness. Only a faint sliver of moonlight slipped through the window, not enough to see anything clearly. They didn't dare move, afraid that even the smallest sound might wake something lurking just inches away. It was hard to tell how much time passed, maybe hours, before the first pale light of dawn began to filter through the leaves. The tension finally began to lift. They hadn't heard another sound from the wall. Shivering from both cold and fear, they slowly sat up. As morning fully arrived, Liam cautiously rapped his knuckles against the wall where the noise had come from. The sound that came back was dull and solid, nothing hollow, no indication of a hidden space. He ran his fingers along the rough wooden surface, searching for cracks, seams, anything that might hint at a hidden door. Nothing. The wall looked just like any other in the old cabin, seamless, ordinary. They searched the entire house again. No new wooden figurines had appeared. Chloe's scarf was still hanging from the tree branch at the edge of the forest. Everything had returned to that unsettling version of normal this place seemed to thrive on. "We have to get out of here, Liam," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "Right now." Liam agreed completely. The silence they'd once craved had turned into a suffocating nightmare. They packed in a hurry, wasting no time. But as they loaded the car and Liam turned the key in the ignition, the engine gave a weak sputter, and died. No lights on the dashboard. The car was completely dead. "You've got to be kidding me," Liam groaned, slamming his hand against the steering wheel. He tried again. And again. Nothing. No cell signal either. They were stranded, trapped in the woods with something watching them. Something playing with them. While trying desperately to fix the car or find even a flicker of signal near the cabin, Liam stumbled upon something hidden beneath the old armchair in the living room. It was an aged leather notebook, tucked deep underneath as if someone had meant for it never to be found. Curious, he opened it. It was a journal, apparently written by someone who had stayed in the cabin long ago. The handwriting had faded, the early entries simple notes about daily life in the remote mountains. But slowly, the tone shifted. The writer began to describe an overwhelming sense of being watched. Strange whispers at night. Wooden figurines showing up on the porch no matter how many times they were thrown away. There were mentions of a local legend, the listeners. Ancient beings said to dwell in the mountains, beings that did not welcome outsiders. Beings that watched, and listened, from the shadows, from the cliffs, from within the very walls of old homes like this one. The final entry was barely legible. A scribbled line. "They're in the walls. They can hear me." A chill ran down Liam's spine. The story in the journal matched their own experiences far too closely. They spent the rest of the day inside, trying to stay calm, locking every door and window. They didn't go outside unless absolutely necessary. The feeling of being watched never left them. At times, they thought they saw shadows moving between the trees at the edge of the forest, but whenever they tried to focus, the figures vanished. By late afternoon, the whispers had returned, floating through the damp mountain air, closer, clearer, and stranger. Like voices speaking in an ancient, unknowable language. As darkness fell again, their fear hit its peak. They blocked every door and window with furniture and huddled in the living room, switching on only a weak battery-powered lamp. The whispers grew louder, circling the cabin from outside. Closer and closer. Then, the scratching began. Not from one wall. From all of them. All around them. The rustling, the whispers, the soft tapping. Tap, tap, tap. The same eerie sound. As if countless unseen things were just on the other side of the wood, listening. Waiting. And then Liam and Chloe saw them. The figurines. They weren't on the porch this time. They were rising slowly, through the cracks in the old wooden floor. Right there. In the middle of the living room. Right in front of them. Liam and Chloe stumbled backward in terror, eyes fixed on the tiny wooden figures rising slowly through the cracks in the old cabin floor. They didn't move, they simply appeared. One after another. Misshapen. Distorted. As if the house itself was birthing them from the rotting wood. The scratching, the clawing, the whispering from all four walls surged into a chaotic crescendo, a horrifying chorus of unseen presence. The cabin was no longer a refuge. It was a trap, closing in on them. The air pressed down on their chests, making it hard to breathe. The window. Liam shouted, his voice barely cutting through the noise. It was the only way out. They bolted for the living room window. Chloe grabbed a spare chair leg and smashed it against the glass. The sharp crack of breaking glass pierced the air, revealing the cold, suffocating night beyond. The whispers seemed to scream in rage as they shattered the cabin's boundary. Liam pushed Chloe through first, then squeezed himself through after her, shards of glass slicing his sleeves and arms. They landed hard on the damp ground outside, but didn't stop. They ran. Blindly. Desperately. Into the pitch-black forest, with only pale moonlight flickering between the leaves to guide them. They didn't know where they were going, only that they had to get as far away from that cursed cabin as possible. The whispers seemed to follow, echoing between the towering trees, mingling with the rustling leaves and the wind's shrill cry. The forest came alive at night in the most terrifying way. Shadows danced at the edges of their vision. It felt like countless eyes were watching from all directions. Every now and then, they heard branches snap nearby or the crunch of leaves, like something, or many things, moving alongside them in the dark. They didn't dare look back. They just ran, praying to find the dirt road or any sign of light. Eventually, after what felt like forever and with their lungs burning from exhaustion, the forest began to thin. Up ahead, they spotted a pair of faint headlights, just barely glowing in the distance. The road. Hope. They stumbled toward it, half running, half falling, constantly glancing back over their shoulders. Chloe screamed and pointed. Liam followed her gaze. At the tree line, right where they had emerged, stood a long row of wooden figurines, identical to the ones from the cabin floor. They stood motionless in the dark, like silent sentries watching them go. And behind them, between the trees, Liam caught a glimpse, tall, shadowy figures with no clear shape, silently observing, before melting back into the darkness of the forest. The listeners. They didn't stop again. They used every last ounce of strength to reach the road. And finally, after nearly an hour of stumbling through the dark, Liam's phone found the faintest sliver of signal. He dialed 911, stammering through the story, lost, trapped, and terrified out in the woods. It took a long time for police and rescue teams to locate them. They were found dehydrated, shaken, and near collapse. The next morning, officers visited the cabin. They found nothing unusual. Except the shattered window and the dead car. No figurines on the floor. None on the porch. No signs of anyone, or anything, in the walls. The old leather journal? Gone. Liam and Chloe's account was chalked up to hallucinations brought on by stress, or local folklore influencing unstable minds. They never went back to the Appalachian Mountains. Their peaceful retreat had turned into a waking nightmare, etched into their memories forever. And even after returning to the noisy comforts of the city, every so often, on a quiet night, Liam or Chloe would freeze at the faintest sound. A soft, indistinct whisper. A cold chill crawling across their backs. As if something, someone, was still listening. From the other side of the wall. The listeners never truly leave. They wait. In the old woods. In old homes. For the next uninvited guests. The London trip was a reward Maya and Olivia had gifted themselves after surviving a stressful final year at university. They chose to stay at a vintage-style hostel in Shoreditch, not far from the train station, nestled between lively bars and bustling weekend markets. It was their first time outside the US, and everything, from the accents, to the old architecture, to the fog-drenched afternoons, felt like stepping into an indie film. On their third day, while sipping coffee at a small cafe tucked beneath a brick archway, Maya was approached by a man. He looked about 30, with dark brown hair slicked back and wearing a long wool coat. He spoke with polish and charm, introducing himself as a freelance photographer. That night, he said, he was hosting a low-key rooftop gathering just nearby. Not a big party, only 10 or so people. Chill and creative, he smiled. But the smile felt slippery. Not out of place. Not aggressive. Just slightly too practiced, like it had been rehearsed in a mirror rather than felt from the heart. Olivia didn't seem too keen, but Maya saw it as an opportunity for that authentic, off-the-beaten-path, London experience travel blogs love to rave about. They both agreed to go. The man typed out the address on her phone, a historic building near Bethnal Green. Knock 3 times, he said with a wink, as if it were an inside joke. Underscore 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 underscore. That night, they found the address. The street was wet, the glow from street lamps glinting off the slick cobblestones. The 3-story building had a gray, washed-out facade and blended into the old row houses on either side. There was no music, no laughter, no sign of a party. Another man, much larger, bald, wearing a dark hoodie, opened the door. He didn't speak, only nodded, and silently led them up a narrow staircase that felt like something out of an old film. The 3rd-floor door was slightly ajar, the latch fastened from the inside. The man knocked 3 times. Click. They were let in. The apartment was small, dimly lit with yellowish bulbs. A few worn-out sofas were placed haphazardly around the room. No music. No guests. On a chipped wooden table sat a few cheap wine glasses and an already half-empty bottle of red. There was a sharp scent in the air, not quite smoke, not food either. It was something like a mix of cleaning chemicals and incense, left to steep too long. The man who'd invited them gestured for them to sit. The doorman remained by the entrance, still silent. Maya glanced at Olivia, eyes asking, "Are we in the right place?" And then, just as Olivia sat down, Maya caught it, a brief glance exchanged between the two men. No smile. No welcome. Just a look. Quick. Calculated. And in that moment, something inside Maya's chest dropped like it had fallen through a trapdoor. She wasn't cold. But a chill spread across her spine. The apartment was unnaturally quiet. Despite the man's earlier charm, there was none of the warmth you'd expect from a casual artists' gathering. No small talk. No music. The windows were covered tightly by curtains. The clock on the wall had stopped ticking. Olivia leaned forward, scanning the room, perhaps searching for a Bluetooth speaker or another guest. Nothing. Maya sat on the edge of the couch, eyes fixed on the wine bottle. She recognized it. It was the cheapest kind, the kind sold in corner shops. Not something an actual London artist would serve at a private rooftop event. The larger man poured the wine. One glass for Maya. One for Olivia. They both declined politely, Maya claiming a headache, Olivia saying she'd already had a drink earlier. The man didn't press the issue, but placed the glasses in front of them deliberately. Like a silent suggestion that wasn't optional. Maya glanced at Olivia's glass. A thin film of cloudy bubbles sat on top, like undissolved powder. Neither of them touched their drinks. The doorman remained by the front door, silent and still. His large frame blocked most of the exit. His eyes never left them, dull, blank, unfriendly. He didn't speak. He just watched. Like a breathing security camera. The man who'd invited them moved closer, settling down beside Maya. His breath smelled of mint, and something else. Something sharp and chemical, like antiseptic. He rambled about the way London light fell across brick buildings, about street photography, about nothing. But his gaze never left Maya's face. Every word brought him closer. Olivia shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at her coat pocket where her phone was tucked. Maya remained still, mind racing. She was tracking every detail, the front door behind them, the large man close by, only one exit, two of them, and two of them. The room felt tighter by the second. As if the apartment itself was breathing, slow, tense, ready to snap. Then Maya's eyes caught something. Under the coffee table, where one leg had been repaired with a wooden splint, was a small red velvet pouch, barely visible, just sticking out from a crack in the base. That doesn't belong there. She faked dropping her phone and leaned down. The smell beneath the table was stronger. Chemical. She didn't have time to pull the pouch out. But she saw just enough. Inside were a row of glass vials, the kind used for samples, filled with a pale yellow liquid that shimmered under the dim light. Her breath caught. She straightened slowly, retrieved her phone. Her movements seemed casual. But inside, everything had shifted. Maya unlocked her phone with her fingerprint, careful not to draw attention. While the man beside her kept talking, she tapped open her emergency messaging app. She shared her location. No text. No emojis. Just a single ping. And a coded phrase buried in the title of the drop pin, read. A word only her sister would recognize. Next to her, Olivia watched. She said nothing. But her eyes said everything. The overhead light flickered. Maybe the wiring. Maybe not. The man abruptly stood and walked to the fridge. The larger man rolled his shoulders. Knuckles popped, loud, deliberate. Maya knew. They were almost out of time. She drew a slow, deep breath, trying to steady her heartbeat. And then, a knock at the door. Not 3 knocks, like before. 4. Quick. Firm. The knock, 4 sharp, deliberate raps, cut through the thick air of the apartment like a blade. Both Maya and Olivia flinched. The man across from them snapped his head toward the door. The large man stood abruptly, stepping back toward the entryway, his expression shifting from blank to alert. No one moved. No one spoke. Another knock. This time, 5 strikes. Louder. More insistent. The man in the wool coat strode to the door and peeked through the peephole. 1 beat. 2. He slammed the peephole cover shut. His face was no longer calm. His lips tightened into a thin, hard line. The larger man stepped up behind him and muttered something under his breath, but Maya couldn't hear it. All she heard was the pounding of her pulse in her ears. She placed a hand on Olivia's thigh. A signal. The third round of knocks came, no pattern this time. Fast. Forceful. Demanding. The big man pulled something black from his hoodie pocket. Maya didn't get a good look, but she knew it wasn't a phone. The other man opened a drawer near the door and pulled out a small Ziploc bag filled with white pills. He shoved it into his coat. And then, from the hallway, a shout. Police! Open the door. Everything after that happened in a blur. But also, somehow, like a slow-motion dream. The door exploded inward, kicked open with a crack that echoed down the stairwell. A flood of black-jacketed officers poured into the room. Shouts. Commands. Maya saw the large man shoved face-first into the wall. The other one tried to bolt for the window. But he never made it. Maya and Olivia sat frozen on the couch, curled in on themselves like flowers battered by wind. They didn't scream. They couldn't. But their bodies shook uncontrollably. One officer knelt beside them, his eyes suddenly soft. He said something calm, but all Maya saw was his mouth moving, like a silent film. A hand rested gently on her shoulder. Olivia gripped her hand in return. They were safe. Or, it seemed like they were. An hour later, they sat in the back of a police car, blankets wrapped around their shoulders, still trembling. The officers said Maya's emergency ping had reached the local command center just in time. They'd already been monitoring the building. Suspected in a string of disappearances over the past 2 years. But they'd had no grounds to act. Until her message triggered a hidden geo-alert. Inside the apartment, police found sedatives. Personal belongings from other victims. And a locked side room. Inside, a tiny camera pointed directly at the sofa. And a computer, with a video file still open. No one said much to Maya or Olivia after that. And honestly, nothing else needed to be said. Maya couldn't remember how long she'd slept. Only that when she finally woke up, it was already morning. A quiet room. White walls. A faint scent of antiseptic. A temporary rest room at the police station. Across from her, Olivia sat perfectly still, eyes down, staring at her own hands, as if checking whether they were still trembling. Neither of them said a word. Sometimes, shock doesn't need tears. That afternoon, a plainclothes officer drove them back to the hostel. The receptionist didn't ask questions. Just offered a quiet, knowing look. Maya stepped into their room and saw her backpack, coat, and camera, still there. Still untouched. But they were not the same girls who'd left that room the day before. Neither of them slept that night. Streetlights streamed through the window, casting gold streaks across the ceiling. Every time Maya heard a door open out in the hallway, her heart jumped. 3 days later, they changed their flights and left London ahead of schedule. The airport was crowded, but it felt safe. Maya kept scanning the crowd, making sure no one was following them. Olivia was quieter than before. But when the plane lifted off the ground, she reached for Maya's hand, and held it tight. They didn't talk much about what had happened. Just now and then, Olivia would ask, "What if we'd taken the drinks?" Maya never answered. Because they both knew. They wouldn't be here to ask. A few weeks later, they received an email from the police. The investigation was still ongoing. Other victims had come forward. Some of them hadn't been as lucky. And then, there was the photo. A friend from Maya's photography class sent her a link to a short article titled, "Fog District Mystery, Police Raid in Bethnal Green." Attached was an old black and white photo, taken from the rooftop of a building. In it, Maya and Olivia were walking along a cobbled street. Maya's eyes were pointed directly toward the camera. Toward whoever had taken the shot. Even though she had no memory of seeing anyone that day. There was no name credited. Just a simple caption. Found among evidence. Photo number 17, observation. Some nights, Maya still dreamed of that apartment. No Olivia. No police. Just the half-closed door. The silent room. And the glass of red wine still waiting. She would wake up drenched in sweat, gripping her phone. Her new nightly ritual. Enable emergency location sharing, before bed. She never drinks anything she didn't open herself. Never goes anywhere without sharing her location. And she never forgets. Lakeview Resort had once been a local gem in the 1990s. But now, it was just a faded echo of its past. Moss-covered cabins stood sparsely around a man-made lake, surrounded by damp pine woods and crumbling stone paths. Your family picked the place for your end-of-summer vacation because it promised peace, no tech, no noise. To you, a 14-year-old used to city life and constant internet, it was just plain boring. Your parents were buried in books and red wine. Your little sister was too young to hang out with. That left you alone, wandering with your old film camera and a few dog-eared comic books. It was on the second afternoon, while sitting alone on a weathered bench behind your cabin, that you heard the soft crunch of footsteps on gravel. She appeared almost silently, long black hair, gray-blue eyes, skin so pale it looked untouched by sunlight. She wore a dark denim jacket, scuffed boots, and a small, worn backpack that swayed gently at her side. She said her name was Elisa. Her voice was light as breath, her accent impossible to place. She didn't ask what you were doing, just said this place was so dead it could bury you. You started talking. Elisa told you she came every summer with her aunt, but didn't seem close to anyone at the resort. She had no phone, no social media. She talked about sneaking out of dinners to sit by the forest's edge and stare at the lake, imagining things people didn't dare say out loud. There was something about the way she spoke, something older, heavier, like she didn't belong to her age. She didn't giggle. Didn't fidget. When you told her you liked photography, she only said, "Don't take pictures of people while they're asleep. That's when things can slip into the frame." You laughed. She didn't. That night, you told your parents about Elisa. They barely looked up, just reminded you not to wander too far and to be back before dark. But something felt off. None of the other families at the resort had mentioned a girl like her. She was too striking to be invisible. The next morning, while washing your face in the cabin's bathroom, you noticed a small handprint on the foggy mirror. 4 long fingers. Streaked with something dark, dirt? Ash? You wiped it away. Maybe your little sister playing a prank. But that night, just as you turned off the lights for bed, something slid under the door. A scrap of paper. One single, messy line. Tomorrow night. 9 o'clock. Meet me at the forest edge behind cabin 5. Elisa. The edge of the forest behind cabin 5 was a shadowy slope where the lights from the resort didn't reach. You arrived right at 9, flashlight in one hand, camera tucked into your backpack. You weren't sure why you'd come. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was something else. Elisa was already there, leaning against a rotting tree trunk. She didn't say hello. Just tilted her head and said, "Follow me. I want to show you something." You trailed her down a narrow path, weaving through thick pine trees, until you reached a small clearing. Elisa knelt and pulled an old metal box from her backpack. Inside, knives. Not toys. Not collector's items. Real knives. Folding blades. Box cutters. Even a small kitchen knife, its edge still scarred with use. She laid them on the ground, one by one, like offerings in some quiet ritual. "I like knives," she whispered. "They don't lie. They always do exactly what they're made to do." You froze. Didn't know what to say. Didn't know whether to stay or run. You gave a nervous laugh, tried to steer the conversation somewhere else, anywhere else. But Elisa didn't laugh. She stared at the blades and asked, almost as if talking to herself, "If I died out here, would anyone remember me?" That night, sleep didn't come. Your mind kept flashing back to the clearing, those knives in the dirt, glinting under the ghostly moonlight. Something wasn't right about her. Something was wrong. But what? The next morning, you wandered the resort, casually asking a few families if they'd seen a girl named Elisa. No one had. No one knew her. She hadn't been at breakfast. Hadn't been by the pool. Wasn't on the guest registry. And room 211, the one she said she was staying in, didn't even exist on the resort map. You told yourself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she was staying with someone. Maybe she lied. Maybe everything was still okay. But that afternoon, when you got back to your cabin after a walk with your mom, the door to your room was slightly ajar. No signs of forced entry. No mess. But on your bed, one of the silver folding knives from last night. Exactly the same. And next to it, a small piece of paper. Just 5 shaky words. You shouldn't ask about me. That night, you locked the cabin door tighter than ever. Every latch secured. Phone on the pillow beside you. Nightlight on. You didn't tell your parents. Saying it out loud might make it real. But the night wouldn't let you rest. Around 1 a.m., a soft clicking sound came from the door. At first, you thought it was the wind. But it was rhythmic. Careful. Like someone testing each latch. Each lock. Patiently. Silently. Your eyes snapped open. Your heart pounded. Then, click. The door creaked open. Slowly. Even though you'd locked it, someone had opened it, from the outside. A gust of cold air slipped into the room. Your nightlight flickered once, then froze, its glow turned pale, gray-blue. The room felt heavier. Like the pressure had dropped. Elisa stepped inside. She didn't make a sound. Same long black hair. Same dusty old jacket. But her face was different now, drained of color, pale like someone pulled from a lake. Her eyes, hollow. Sunken. Almost not human. In her hand, the silver folding knife. She approached quietly, placing it on the nightstand beside your bed. Then, she took a step forward. You wanted to scream. But your voice was gone. You wanted to move. But your limbs wouldn't obey. Sweat poured down your back. A tingling numbness crawled up your spine like static. Elisa tilted her head. She smiled, but the smile was crooked, like her face wasn't used to human expression. "I just wanted to say goodbye," she whispered. Her voice sounded like it came from the bottom of a well. Empty. Not alive. And then, footsteps. From the hallway. Your father's voice. "You still awake, bud?" Elisa froze. Her eyes flicked toward the door. Then back to you. One last look, sharp and cold enough to etch itself into your memory forever. She stepped backward. Silent as fog. The door closed behind her. No hand touched it. Security was called immediately. For the first time, you told everything. No more holding back. The knife. The notes. Room 211. The head of security, a man who'd worked there over 15 years, paled as you spoke. At first, he brushed it off as kids playing games. But when you said the name, Elisa, his face changed. He spoke low, carefully. Back in 2014, there was a girl named Elisa reported missing. They said she escaped from a youth psychiatric center. She was believed to have been hiding in these woods for weeks. Her body was never found. But some say they saw her, just standing by the lake at 2 a.m. head bowed, staring at the water. One tourist came looking for his girlfriend, and vanished. They found his phone days later. The last photo taken? A picture of him, sleeping, shot from above. No one ever figured out how Elisa got into locked rooms. She had no keycard, no record of staying. Room 211 had never existed. After everyone left, you sat alone in your room, trying to calm your breath. Security had taken the knife, said it would be held as evidence. But when you looked at the nightstand, the silver knife was still there. Next to it, a new note. I don't need a key to enter a place I once belonged. The next morning, the resort felt different. Security was everywhere. Staff went door to door, scanning keycards and double-checking room entries. Your family packed early. Your mom tried to frame it as a weird misunderstanding. Your dad said nothing, just stood quietly on the balcony, staring toward the woods. The silver knife that security had taken the night before? Gone. No one admitted to seeing it again. And no one could explain why the security footage recorded nothing during the time Elisa had entered your room. Before leaving, you walked back to where room 211 should have been, between 210 and 212. But there was nothing there. Just a smooth, white wall. Cold. Blank. Seamless. Then, you noticed it. A faint boot print, pressed near the baseboard. Exactly like the boots Elisa wore. Back in the city, sleep refused to come. Every time you closed your eyes, you saw that cabin bed. The flickering nightlight. The slow creak of the door. You dreamed of Elisa's face. Not angry. Not sad. Just empty. Like a hole where a soul should be. A week after returning home, you got an anonymous email. No sender. No subject line. Just a photo attachment. A picture of your bedroom. Taken at night. The angle was high, almost from the ceiling. In the photo, you were asleep. Facing away. And sitting at the edge of the bed. A girl with black hair. Holding a silver knife. You sent the photo to the police. They couldn't trace the IP. No fingerprints. No signs of a break-in. Your home cameras showed nothing. They called it a sick joke. A fabricated file. A deep fake. But you knew. You knew those eyes were real. Too real. 2 years have passed. Your family never returned to Lakeview. Eventually, the resort shut down. Too many stories. Too many whispers about the girl in the old jacket wandering near the lake at dawn. Some guests said they heard soft whispers from the space between rooms 210 and 212. Even though that room never appeared on the map. Others swore their phone galleries were wiped, except for one blurry image. A silhouette. A girl. Backlit. Standing by the window. Holding a knife. No official records ever listed anyone named Elisa as a guest. And yet, people still swear they've seen her. Sitting alone. Watching. Waiting. Until it's dark enough to enter a room again. Not all vacations leave you with memories and souvenirs. Some leave behind scars, silent ones that linger in your sleep, in your walls, or just outside your window. If one of these stories sent a chill down your spine, tell us in the comments. And if you're brave enough for more, subscribe and come back next time. Because here, the horror never truly takes a holiday. Welcome to the Nightmare Vault.